Hi everyone, how you going? Today I'm going to talk to you about the letter sound tiles that your children will be bringing home from school. So just a brief explanation. When children come to school and start learning how to read, we first start with groups of letter sound tiles. And you'll notice that this first group here is a combination of a few consonants and a couple of vowels. And then each couple of weeks, we add more letter sound tiles in. And you can see quite quickly, we start to build up a whole bank of letter sound tiles. I'm just going to show you what we do at those beginning stages with the letter sound tiles. So I'm going to grab this first pack, and at home, this is what we can practice. We actually use them like flashcards, and what we want our children to do is be really automatic and quick at saying the sound when they see this letter, the grapheme, and we want to make sure that we're checking their articulation is spot on as well. So when they're doing this, it would be just like this. S, n, t, I, p, a. So when we're working with just one group at a time, we can have our letter sound tiles here. And one of the activities you might like to do at home is practicing to build words with the letter sound tiles that your child is up to. Your teacher will let you know exactly which letter sounds your child has been taught and which ones they're up to coming home and practicing. For example, if they've learnt this group, if your child's been at school for a couple of weeks, half a term maybe, they would have these pack and some of these. An activity to do at home would be to segment the sounds orally, count out the sounds, and then build that word. Here's an example. So they might be given the word sat, and you will say sat, and your child will repeat that word after you, sat, and then you would count out the sounds in that word, s, a, t. And as you are saying those sounds, your child would be pulling out the sound tiles, s, a, t, to build that word. Now they might have a little bit of trouble blending that together. So firstly we get them to point underneath the sound that they're saying, s, a, t, and then we start squishing it together, s, a, t. Oh, now squish it together. Oh look, the letters have now made a word, sat, sat. We want to practice that over and over and over again. So what we would say is like, oh, we made the word sat. Let's see if we can change that first sound s to p. So let's take off the s and find a p. And then we'd put that together, and then you'd follow that same routine. The word is pat. Let's say pat, pat. Or let's do the sounds in pat. P, a, t. Pull out those sound cards and start pushing them together to make a word. P, a, t, squish. P, a, t. Pat. Oh yes, we've got a word now. Pat. Sometimes in this blending process, they might go from the back, not always from the front. So they might have at, pat. And that might be easier for them to do. Or they might do it the other way around. They might go p, p, a, p, a, pat. So you can try a few different ways if your child is having a little bit of trouble blending that together. Once those are becoming really automatic and your child is becoming quick and can articulate them and build those letters together, your teacher will start sending home more and more letter sound tiles. And you can practice that drill at home. With the sound and letter cards, also you will have your teacher provide some heart words. These are known as tricky words or heart words, and these are words that we have to learn off by heart, really. And then the letter patterns will become more familiar to the children as they get further and further and further down the sequence of learning. But for the purpose of reading and practicing reading, your teacher will send home the words that they're up to. You can notice in this pack that there is, they might first start out with only 3 or 4, and then that will build up just like their sound and letter cards do. You'll see that in this pack, the teachers provided "that" with a capital letter to be used at the beginning of sentences and "that" with a lowercase to be used within sentences. Now, coming along with this is their practice reading material. I've got a couple of examples of some practice reading material here, and your teacher will be matching your child's reading material to exactly what letter sounds they are up to. Something right at the beginning is only practicing a few letter sounds, and you can see when we open these up that it builds quite quickly. When our children are reading to us, we want to make it a really positive experience, and we want to really build their self-esteem. We want them to feel success and joy in what they're reading. And remembering this is their time to practice the letter sounds that they have already learned. So if we open up, Pat, you'll notice that the words in here are only using those letter sound tiles with a couple of the heart words sprinkled in. If you come to a word and your child becomes stuck, you can prompt them by saying, let's sound out those letters, t, a, p. And you can use your phoneme fingers, your sound fingers, to count out those sounds and blend them together. Or you might even use your letter sound tiles to make that word and do that little routine to reinforce that word. T, a, p, t, a, p, t, a, p, tap. Oh, it's a tap. So this one is a pretty simple one, right at the beginning of their learning. Then you can see that over a few weeks, as your teachers add more and more letter sound tiles in, the text will build up. This is one of my favourites. The pet gig. Cat, dog and pig get a gig on the deck. 10 men go to the gig. Sam, Tim, Dan, Don and Sid. Nick and sad dad. Oh, the din, can it end? Dad gets into the peg sack. It can end. And then you can really build up your child's vocabulary by having a discussion about the pictures, what they can see in there. And also you can ask lots of questions during the reading happening and after the reading to check that they understand what's happening inside this text. After a term or so, you will see that the reading material builds up in complexity quite quickly. If your student is in year 1 or a high grade, they will be moving on to more complex parts of our English language, and their letter sound tiles might look a bit more like this. They will be looking at ways that some sounds have multiple ways of spelling that sound. Your teacher will know where your child's at and send home those as well. Just coming over here now to have a look at some letter naming activities. So letter names are very important too. So what you can see here is we've just got some letter tiles, and you would jumble them all up and they would practice them doing an alphabet arc. I've just put a board here so that they can go around the outside. So you would be doing the letter names in this process. A, B, C, D, E, F. And the same kind of thing, you really want this to be quite automatic, and you want them to be able to touch the letter as they're saying it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. And we all know what's going to happen here, don't we? So we just really do need to make sure that that one-to-one matching is happening. L, M, N, O, P. If it helps, get them to move the tile as they're saying it. L, M, N, O, P. So they can be moving it, having that physical touching is really important. A couple of activities that you can do here is you can ask your child to close their eyes, and you can actually jumble up a few of the letters, switch them out, jumble up where they are, and then ask them to open their eyes and go through the names again and put them back into the correct order. Another activity that you might like to try here is to get them to close their eyes and then pick out a tile and place it in their hand. And with their eyes closed, see if they can touch that tile and recognise that letter. And then pop it back into its right order. Okay, let's have a quick look now at some handwriting activities. So during this time, a handwriting sheet or a letter formation sheet is something that will be coming home quite regularly in take-home packs for junior primary students. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, handwriting, a 2-minute activity, we can get that over and done with. I just want to actually talk about the importance of handwriting. Handwriting is such an important skill, and the research tells us that if a child is able to form letters correctly and automatically, this really plays a strong role in being able to read fluently and also write more complex sentences. Because if we think about it, like a tennis player, if a tennis player can automatically hit a backhand really quickly without lots and lots of thinking about how that formation occurs, then they can think about the strategy of their game. And that's exactly what it's like when we're forming handwriting letters. So a sheet like this, I'm just going to show you a couple of activities to do before you come to this handwriting sheet. So one of the handwriting sheets would be the letter A is its name and its sound is A. And they're the first combination that they'll learn when they're coming to school. So it's really good to have kind of a visual hook. So when I'm teaching with the letter A, we would have this kind of memory hook around the apple and up and down the stick. Around the apple, up and down the stick. Apple, A. With our young students, you really want to get their whole body involved. So you want to start out with a really big gross motor action using their whole body. So before they get to the handwriting sheet, we talk about that little hook around the apple and up and down the stick. We'd do it like this. We'd move our whole body using our elephant trunk stuck onto our nose. We'd go around your body and up and down the stick. Oh, I said body. Hang on. Around the apple and up and down the stick. And we'd practice that a few times. And then we'd start to bring that gross motor into a little bit of a fine motor skill. Then they'd get out their magic pen and their invisible notebook, and they would start to do it on their hand. Around the apple, up and down the stick. And really important for the children to be saying that memory hook as they're writing it. And if we come over here, before we get to the handwriting sheet, let's put that over there. It's really good to have different things. I'm really glad that I found a use for this soup mix. Get them to practice it, practice writing that little memory hook and saying it out loud with some different textures. Around the apple, up and down the stick. Then rub it out. Around the apple, up and down the stick. Rub it out. When they're feeling pretty good about that and you can see that the actual formation is correct, they're starting in the right position, they're finishing in the right position, then they're ready to move on to some cut. It's a good idea if they put a couple of lines on, or if you do too. You can do that part for them. Then you ask a student, so what's the memory hook? Around the apple, up and down the stick. Make sure they're starting in the right place. If they're not, you can put your hand over the top of theirs and guide them. Really important that you can write one for them first on the page so that they can follow along, but most importantly that they're saying it as they go. So it will be around the apple, up and down the stick. Around the apple, up and down the stick. Now, if you notice that they're starting in the wrong way, say, oops, no, we're going to leave that one. You can either cross it out, and the great thing about whiteboards is, of course, you can rub them out, or you can just put a line underneath and move on to the next one. Show them again the right starting position. Around the apple, up and down the stick. Then a nice little trick at the end is, Pick your best one. Okay, I think that's my best one. Beautiful. Once again, lots of encouragement and making it a positive experience. Once you've gone from the big gross motor, remember, around the apple, up and down the stick, into the find motor, and then had some practice, then we're ready to move on to something like their worksheet. So rather than being a 2-minute activity, try to bring it from that big gross motor down to that fine motor tactile, lots of practice, and then onto our worksheet.